So let's continue where we stop. We are in the middle of all about functions. So far we have seen the predefined functions, the special functions which are enclosed between underscores, and then we have seen string manipulation functions quite a lot in detail. Now we will actually talk about the user defined functions, or how to develop the functions by ourselves. So some people have asked questions in the Slack about uh, uh, keyword arguments, etc. Those things will be clarified as part of the upcoming topics in this module. There is some background noise. Let me mute everyone here. For some reason, yeah, now it should work. Now everyone is muted. There won't be any background noise. There seems to be some questions in the chat. Let me actually open up those questions as well. Yeah. Mr. Venkoba, if you actually share your email ID, I will send the invitation to you so that you can directly get into the appropriate channel also, not just the workspace. Slack have two things. One is workspace, second one is channel. I will directly get you into the channel. Okay. I think you are outdated because you are using Hotmail. Hotmail, Yahoo, I consider all those people are outdated.
No, I'm using for the past 30 years. Every
I know.
recruiter knows this email address.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about defining functions and returning values. Okay, another request. So let me add him also. Okay. So here are some of the rules to define a function in Python. Function blocks begin with the keyword def followed by function name and parentheses. You can see some examples here. So this is how it will look like. Typically for all the functions, we will have a docstring. So docstring is the one which will help us with the usage of the function. So we have to be a bit elaborate here, and we have to tell whatever is important for this function. This is how the docstring will be. When it comes to passing parameters, we have to use circular brackets like this, and we can actually pass parameters. Typically, we don't specify the data types either for parameters or arguments, or even the return type. For return type also, we typically don't specify the data type. Okay, and when it comes to return, this is how you return. You can return one value, or you can return multiple values also. If you want to return multiple values, you can comma separate them and you can return. The first statement of a function can be optional statement, which is nothing but a documentation string of the function or docstring, which I have already explained. When functions are invoked, all arguments in the Python language are passed by reference into the function parameters. So there is a concept of pass by reference and pass by value. Python follows pass by reference by default. I don't know whether it allows pass by value, but typically we use pass by reference only. And don't worry too much about those technical nuances. That is not that relevant. Every function implicitly contains a return none statement. So if you don't return anything, it will automatically return none. It will have it defined implicitly. If you don't have return statement, it will return none. As I have mentioned to you, we can return multiple expressions. This is the syntax of a simple function. We can actually say help of function name. And if you look at the output, this sample function, which is nothing but docstring, is displayed. And this is how you can actually provide documentation for the function. And here, I'm actually just passing those arguments 1 and 2 to satisfy two parameters for this function. And it is just printing those because I'm just saying return a comma b. Whatever I have passed, I have written them, and I'm able to print both. So when I actually return multiple values, it internally converts into a tuple. What is a tuple? We will see tomorrow. Don't worry too much about tuple at this time. The reason why the output is enclosed in parenthesis is because it actually returns a tuple. If you are curious about it, what you can do, you can actually take this and then you can say type and then run. You can see that when we actually pass multiple values to the return statement, it is returning tuple. And the toString behavior of tuple is to print the values in the tuple using circular brackets. What is a tuple? We will see tomorrow. Don't worry too much about it. It is part of the data structures. And apart from collections, tuple is also very important data structure. I will talk about it. So, Mr. Venkoba, we'll actually see those details. We can use as part of the expressions. We will actually develop a couple of functions to understand all these nuances. Okay, first let us understand a bit more about function parameters and arguments. Parameter is variable in the declaration of function. Argument is the actual value of this variable that gets passed to the function. So when we actually define functions like this, okay, at the time of defining functions, these are called as parameters. But when we invoke this function like this, these are nothing but arguments. So arguments are the ones which are passed to parameters to satisfy parameters. But these days we use both interchangeably. We use parameters and functions, sorry, not functions, but arguments interchangeably. They almost mean the same thing. In Python, parameters can be objects or even functions. We can pass named functions or Lambda functions as arguments, and we'll talk about how to pass functions to other functions as arguments at a later point in time, including Lambda functions. Now let us perform few tasks to understand all aspects of parameters for a given function. First, 1 minute, I'm in the wrong window. I'm not supposed to demonstrate using this. Just give me a moment, okay? We are actually talking about this one. So we want to develop two functions. One is get invalid phone count. So the function takes two arguments, employee ID and phone numbers. We want to check whether each phone number have 10 digits. And we want to return employee and number of phone numbers with less than 10 digits. So in this case, as I want to pass multiple phone numbers, there is a concept of variable varying arguments. And we can define phone numbers to be a varying argument, which means whenever we invoke this function called as get invalid phone count, the function which we are going to develop, I can pass as many phone numbers as I want for a given employee ID, and I should be able to validate. Instead of restricting one phone number or 10 phone numbers, we can make it variable number. Okay, let's get into the implementation, then you will understand. In this case, function name is nothing but get invalid phone count. So let me copy paste. So the function starts with a def like this. All the arguments will go into the brackets, and this takes two arguments. The first one is employee ID, and you have to follow these naming conventions with respect to variables, functions, etc. This is called as snake case. So in Python, if we are using Python as a scripting programming language, all functions, variables, etc. are typically defined using snake case, which means if you are passing a phrase, or if you are deriving the names using a phrase which contain multiple words, each word should be separated by underscore, and all the characters should be in the lowercase. You should not have uppercase anywhere. So the first argument is employee ID, and the Python code should be readable. It should be similar to the plain English, and make sure that you follow that so that it is easily readable and supportable by other developers. And then the second argument is phone numbers. So if I just say phone number like this, then I can only pass one argument. One phone number to satisfy this argument. As our requirement is to take as many phone numbers as possible that are associated with the employee, and hence we can just add asterisk in the beginning. which says this phone numbers is nothing but a parameter which takes variable number of arguments. Okay, and if you have normal arguments or normal parameters and then variable number arguments, typically the first one will be the normal one. Then we will have the variable the parameters which takes variable arguments or variable number of arguments. Now we can say colon here. Okay, and then we can actually develop the functionality. I want to ensure that all the phone numbers associated with a given employee is valid. And how to check the validity? I just have to check whether phone number have 10 digits or not. If it have 10 digits, then we are good to go. Finally, I want to return employee ID and number of phone numbers with less than 10 digits in a print statement. In a return statement. When we invoke, we'll just print the employee ID and the invalid count if there are any invalid phone numbers. Okay. So that being said, whenever you want to dynamically aggregate, you create something called as the aggregator or totaler. So in this case, I am defining a variable by name invalid count, which is our totaler, which will capture the total number of invalid phones. And then when we pass varying argument or variable number of arguments for this parameter, which can take variable number of arguments whenever we invoke it, we can process that as a list. As we can process as a list, already we have seen yesterday how to iterate through the list, right? We can use for loop like this, not yesterday, but as part of the last week's class. We can use for loop, and we can define a variable to assign each and every element in that list. And then we can say in, and then we can pass this phone numbers. Okay, so these phone numbers can be interpreted as a list. Okay, if you are curious about the type of it, you can actually use type of phone numbers as part of the code and print it, and you can take it further. There seems to be few questions. I will take those questions once I develop the function completely. Okay, so for phone number in phone numbers, I want to check whether the phone number is 10 digits. So I can say if len of phone numbers. So the reason why I'm not enclosing this in circle brackets is in Python, from Python 3, as per the PEPATE standards, which we follow while programming, we don't need to pass the condition using circle brackets like this. Yeah, and if you are following PEPATE standards, if you use PyCharm as editor, it will throw a warning that you are not following standards. Okay, so I just removed the circle brackets. I'm just directly saying len of phone number, because we are trying to process one phone number at a time. If it is not equal to 10, let me check the rule here. Yeah, check whether each phone number have 10 digits. Yeah, you can actually say not equal to 10. And then you can actually say invalid count plus equal to 1. Now I have to go back to the same level of for loop, because the for loop end here. So if condition is part of the for loop, that's why we have it indentation here. And then invalid plus equal to 1 is part of the if condition. So invalid count plus equal to 1 is same as invalid count equal to invalid count plus 1. Both are same. Okay. Now I want to return, and return can be parallel to for, and hence once you hit enter, you might be at this position. You just hit the back space, and you can go to the same level as for, and then you can actually say return. As part of the return, I want to return both employee ID and invalid count. Now the function is defined. How to invoke it? You just say get invalid phone count, and then you can actually say employee ID, let's say 1, and then phone numbers. So let me pass the valid phone number for now, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 0, a 10-digit phone number, and you can actually see the result. If you want to print, you can actually say s equal to, I'm creating a string by saying employee ID have invalid count, invalid phones. Okay, now I can say employee ID. So I'm assigning to two variables here, employee ID comma invalid count equal to, okay, and then I want to print. The way I can print is I can say print yes is this one. It have the placeholders, right? So I can say s dot format, which we have seen last as part of the last week sessions, and then we can say employee ID equal to employee ID, and then invalid count equal to invalid count, and then we should be able to run these three cells to see the output. As of now, this phone number is valid. That's why it is saying 0 invalid phones. Now I can also say comma and 1, 2, 3, 4 and run it. Now you see there is one invalid phone, 1, 2, 3, 4 is not valid, and hence it is displaying employee 1 have 1 invalid phones. So this is how you can actually pass the arguments. I have covered how to pass the invalid, variable number of arguments to a parameter. If you want to define a parameter which can take variable number of arguments, you just have asterisk at the beginning. Now let me take the questions as part of the Zoom chat, and also I will actually look into the Slack if there are any questions in the Slack. There are no questions in the Slack. Now let's get into the questions in the Zoom. So Sriram is saying, like Oracle, do we need to mention the keywords like procedure, function, and procedure? I think it is already covered. By now it should be clear, Sriram. So this is the syntax. Yeah, this Srinivas, I think even asterisk is cleared. I think everything is clear. If you still have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll move on. If we have multiple parameters with list, you can actually give an example so that I can actually have a look at it. Okay, let's move on. You can actually frame this question as part of the Slack, and then I will take it further. No, Sairam, it is not correct. You cannot have more than one variable number of arguments, because if you think about it, right? Let's say I define 4 phone numbers and then 3 SSNs. How will you determine which one is related to phone number and which one is related to SSN, right? So that is not correct. You cannot have more than one parameter which can take variable number of arguments. In this case, SSN is typically 1. So the way we will define parameters is employee ID, SSN. So the second argument is always SSN. And then third argument is variable number of phone numbers. And we can have only one argument which will take the variable number of arguments. You can only have one parameter which can take variable number of arguments. Okay. Now let us take another task, adding employee by using a function called as add employee. The function name is nothing but add employee in this case. And then the function should take employee ID, employee name, salary, and phone numbers. Phone numbers should be variable number, and degrees should be variable keyword argument. So you will understand this concept of keyword argument. And once we go through, someone have asked about star KW args. So you will understand the relevance of that once we go through this task. Degree should be with specialization. There can be one or more degree with specializations. Okay. The keys can be bachelor's, master's, executive, doctorate, etc. So in place of bachelor's, we can pass values like BSc, BA, etc. With master's, we can pass MTech, etc. With executive, you can actually pass EMBA, doctorate, PhD in a particular area, so and so forth. So the keys are bachelor's, master's, executive, doctorate, and you can pass the value associated with your profile using that degrees as argument. When it comes to salary, it should be defaulted to 3000. If salary is passed and if it is less than 3000, throw exception with message invalid salary. Salary should be at least 3000. Also, we have to call get invalid phone count and check if it is greater than 0. If invalid phone count is greater than 0, throw an exception with the message one or more phone number of an employee is not valid. So we want to throw the exception in this case. Then we want to get count of degrees by processing variable keyword argument. If there are no exceptions, print employee ID with the number of degrees is successfully added. So this is the problem statement. Just give me a moment, okay? Now let's get into the implementation of this function. Once you understand this, you will be able to see all the possible options we have with respect to defining functions in Python. So the function name is nothing but add employee. The first argument is employee ID, which is a normal argument. Then employee name. Now we have phone numbers, salary, as well as degrees, right? With respect to salary, we want to default it to a particular value. And if it is not, if we pass a value, it should be greater than 3000. Otherwise, it will take that 3000 as the value. But if you pass less than 3000, we want to throw an exception. Now we have phone numbers, which takes variable number of arguments for it. Salary, which takes only one argument, but there's a default value. And also degrees, which is a variable number of keyword arguments. Okay, if you have variable number of keyword arguments, typically it should go at the end like this. So in this case, I will be naming it as degrees. So the last one should be the variable number keyword arguments, the parameter which takes variable number keyword arguments. Okay, and then the other arguments, we have salary and the parameter which takes variable number of phone numbers. We should have phone numbers first and then salary, okay, with 3000. This is also called as keyword argument. As part of the keyword argument, typically we assign a value and that will be taken as default. Okay, so even if you don't pass argument satisfying salary in this case, it will just inherit 3000 from here. So the order in which the arguments need to be passed, if you have special type of arguments like this, is the variable, the parameter which takes variable number of keyword arguments should go last. And then all those parameters which take default values. Okay, and then the phone numbers. Okay, so one way to solve the problem of the earlier questions, right? Some people are asking how to pass SSN, phone numbers, etc. as variable arguments. So if you want to cover that scenario, you can just define them as normal arguments like this. Okay. However, you can pass a list to it. Phone numbers can be a list, SSN to a list, SSN also can be a list, and you can take care of it. So when we pass the argument, we'll enclose all the phone numbers in square brackets, all the SSNs in square brackets, and we'll pass. Okay, that is one way of dealing with scenarios like phone numbers and addresses, as Mr. Prakasam is saying. Okay, but for now, I don't want to use the list. I just want to use phone numbers like this, so that I can pass the phone numbers as comma separated without enclosing in the square bracket, so that we don't need to worry about building the list and pass to it. Okay, so in case if you want to use normal keyword argument, the argument which takes variable number of keywords, and also the argument which takes variable number of sorry, the parameter which takes variable number of arguments such as phone numbers, the order should be like this. First, the parameter which takes variable number of arguments, then the keyword argument, then the parameter which takes variable number of keyword arguments. Okay, now I can close the spec and I can actually start implementing the functionality. As part of this function, there are two places where we want to raise the exception. So if you have the requirement to raise the exceptions, which will be the case in most of the scenarios, the way it will work is like this. You just say try. Okay, I don't want to get into too many details with respect to exceptions at this time, and even as part of the course, I will just cover some of the important exceptions which we handle. If you want to explore to develop custom exceptions and all, you can explore by yourself. But in Python or in most of the programming languages, we don't need to write the custom exceptions that often, and hence I'm considering it as a non-core aspect of programming language, and hence I moved that out. Okay. Now, if you have try block, if you want to catch the exception, you can say except. So in this case, I want to write the exception called as value error when I validate my salary and also the degrees. What are the exceptions I want to handle? One is phone count and the salary. These are the two main exceptions which I want to raise, not the degrees, right? So I can say except value error as VE. So I'll be raising this exception as part of the if condition. When I raise that exception, it will get into this exception block. Okay. Here I just want to say print problem with employee data. This is basic way of raising the exceptions. If you want to write general exception, you can say except error as VE and you can take it further. Now accept exception as E and you can take it further, and you can raise that exception as part of the if condition in your code. In this case, as I feel value error makes sense, I'm raising that exception when I actually validate the phone count and also the salary. Okay. Now, first I want to validate the phone numbers. For that, I want to use the function which I have created earlier. So one of the naming convention, if you have the local variables that are defined as part of the function, and also if you have parameters, either we will pass the parameters like this p underscore to say that these are parameters that are passed, okay, or we say L underscore for the variables, so that we will not end up with confusion with respect to the variables and parameters which have similar naming convention. So here I am actually saying L underscore employee ID, L underscore invalid count equal to, we have the function called as get invalid phone count, which we have developed earlier. It takes employee ID and phone numbers, and we can pass the variable number, the parameter which takes variable number of arguments. We can satisfy it by passing the same argument into this function. Let me type and then you will understand. In this case, I just want to pass the phone numbers as is, and hence I can actually take care of it like this. First, let us run this and see how it will look like. So as part of the add employee function, I am passing only employee ID, then employee name as IT, okay, and I'm passing the phone number. You can hit enter or run, it is working fine. To actually make sure that we confirm that it is running fine, I want to print a statement saying print employee with degrees is successfully added. Okay, and then I can say dot format employee ID and then len of degrees. So we as of now it will say degrees as 0 because we are not passing any argument for degrees, and hence it should be 0, which means our add employee worked fine. However, if there is a invalid phone number, I want to raise an exception. How to raise that exception? I can say if L underscore invalid count not equal to 0. So if there are invalid counts, any other number than 0, I just want to raise value error. Okay, and now we are capturing that value error as part of the except, and we are printing a statement over there. And hence, if I run this, it will work fine without any issue. But if I pass additional phone number which have invalid number, then it will say problem with employee data. Okay, but however, if I say 567890 and if I run it, because there are no invalid phones, it is successfully executed, and we can see that employee 1 with 0 degrees is successfully added. Okay, now I want to ensure that even the salary is validated. So how to validate salary in this case? I just have to say and salary less than or equal to 3000. Let me check the functionality. It is saying if salary is passed and if it is less than 3000, throw exception with message invalid salaries. Salary should be at least 3000. So if you want to get this custom message, then as part of the value error, we can paste it directly. We can add this, but it is a bit misleading message, but it works. Okay, now I want to run this. The function is created, and let me pass 2000, and you can see that. Okay, so as we are using keyword argument after the variable number of arguments, you see now it is actually throwing error. Why it is throwing error? It is considering this also as a string, because phone numbers is a parameter which takes variable number of arguments. As it is not a string, it is giving the value error, not the value error. Let us see. It is actually giving the type error. Object of type int has no len. So how to solve this problem? When you have keyword argument like this after a parameter which takes variable number of arguments, you have to define the argument name like this, and then equal to, and then you have to say 2000. Now if you run it, it is saying successfully added. Okay, here it should be and salary. Yeah, it should actually throw the exception. Let me see. If L invalid count equal to 0 or here I have to say or. Okay, now it should actually say invalid salary should be at least 3000. Okay, if you want to make it a bit more relevant, I can say either phone numbers are not valid or invalid salary should be at least 3000. Now it will be passing a bit more appropriate message, handling both the scenarios. I just want to keep it simple. I want to just explain some of the key concepts. Okay, now if you pass 5000 instead of 3000, you see employee 1 with 0 degrees is successfully added. If I don't pass it at all, okay, employee with degrees is successfully added. His salary is, and his salary is, okay, I can actually say salary here. Let me move this here. After length of degrees, I want to pass the salary also. Okay, now let us run this. Okay, I have less than or equal to. Let me remove this equal to. Now it should be fine. Okay, even though I did not pass 3000, it inherited the value from here. But if I pass 5000, it will take 5000 as the salary. Again, I have to say salary equal to 5000. Now let me run this. Okay, so we have come up with the logic satisfying these 4 arguments. Now the last one, which is nothing but degrees. Okay, so how to pass degrees when you have this? So when you have the variable number of arguments, you can just define the keys the way you want and you can pass. Okay, so we will actually come up with the functionality in a moment. First, let us pass the arguments. So in this case, I'm just saying comma, and we have the keys such as bachelor's. Let's say my bachelor's is BSc. There seems to be some questions. I will answer those questions in a moment. Also, I want to pass master's. So all these I'm passing at the runtime, and all these are keyword arguments. As degrees is nothing but a parameter which takes variable number of keyword arguments, I can pass as many as I want like this. So master's equal to, mine is MCA, So let me pass that. And then others, which are nothing but executive and doctorate, I don't have any of those things, and hence I'm not passing at this time. Okay, as of now, I'm not processing that as part of our function, but still it is working fine. Now, if you want to process these degrees, as we have seen, the 4 numbers will be passed as a list into this. That's why when we say for I in blah, 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 we are able to process. When it comes to the argument or parameter such as degrees, which takes variable number of keyword arguments, it will be passed as dict. Don't worry too much if you don't understand dict at this time. As part of collections, we'll be talking about dict very extensively, and I will explain a lot more in detail. For now, just keep in mind that the degrees will be passed into this function as a dict. When you have dict, and if you want to iterate through the dict, okay, what you can do is you can say for loop like this, for like this, and you can say for degree key in degrees. So first I'm just printing the keys, and then I can say print of degree key. Let us see what it will print. You see, it is only printing keys, which are nothing but bachelors and masters. If you want to get values also, you can actually say degrees like this, and then you can actually get the value of that key by saying degree key like this. You might not be able to digest this information completely at this time. Once we get into the collections and tuples, when I talk about dict, you will understand these things a lot more clearer. So even if you have any questions with respect to dict, I will dodge for now. We will get into those details as part of tomorrow's sessions. Okay, for now, just understand that when we pass variable number of keyword arguments for the parameter which takes variable number of keyword arguments, as part of the function, while processing, we can process it as a dict. In this case, I want to just see if the keys belong to bachelor's, master's, executive, and also doctorate. Let's say I want to raise an error saying that some invalid degree exists. If all the degrees are valid, then I just want to print this employee added statement. So let me move this to here. Okay. So in this case, I want to make sure that the key belongs to one of those 4 keys which we have defined as part of the problem statement: bachelor's, master's, executive, doctorate. How to handle that? So degrees key will give those keys. Now I can say if degree key not in, we can actually create a tuple of those 4 values. Okay, let's say degree types, that is the tuple. Okay, so tuple can be represented in circle brackets. Again, I will cover the concept of tuples tomorrow. Okay, I can say degree types equal to, we have 4. One is bachelor's, second one is master's, third one is executive, and fourth one is doctorate. Okay, I can say if degree key not in, degree types like this. And then I can actually raise value error. And also as part of the value, as part of the exception, I want to print either 4 numbers are not valid or invalid salary, or the degree is not correct. One or more degrees are not correct. I'm just comparing the keys. I'm not getting into the values in the simple example. Now let us run this. As of now, I haven't passed any incorrect keys. That's why it is showing employee 1 with 2 degrees is successfully added and his salary is 5,000. Now let's say instead of bachelor's, I say B. And now let me run it. You see, you got an exception saying that 1 or more degrees are not correct. Okay, so this is how you can actually pass these different types of arguments to your functions and take it further. As a programmer, you might not use these features that often, but if you look into the help, many functions will have all these types of parameters. Unless and until you understand the essence of these parameters, you will not be able to use them effectively. That's why I end up covering this. Sometimes it is also very useful as part of our business logic also, depending upon the scenario. Okay, now let me take the questions here. So the questions are,
Sir,
no, let me take the questions in the chat, then you can ask. Okay. So first, Raj, how it find the difference between second phone number and 3000? Yeah, I think this is answered. Raj, if you still have a question, you can follow up. That was the mistake I made, and that's why it threw the exception. Yes, Venkova, here I'm not following the best of the programming practices. So you are right. We should handle the exception a bit differently. Typically, right, even we might just raise a generic exception, but we use logging library, and as part of the logging, we typically log the message a bit appropriately as part of the if condition, and then we'll raise the exception. And exception can be generic in that case. As part of the log messages, we will know where it is failing. Okay. Raj is okay. Raj question is already answered. Why are we giving spaces between B and SC? That is actually the correct punctuation rule. Whenever you have dot, you should always follow with a space. Any punctuation mark other than space, typically followed by space, dot, comma, semicolon, etc. Unfortunately, even in the profiles, most of the people doesn't follow these punctuation rules. With respect to degrees, it is not that important, but in general, the way you should follow punctuation rules is anything after punctuation marks such as full stop, comma, means whenever you use a punctuation mark such as full stop, comma, etc., you have to follow with a space. And these days, most of the kids are English medium, but still they don't follow these rules, especially the Chaitanya Narayana schools. Okay, other schools are fine. Oak Ridge, those are fine. They emphasize on this quite a lot. But typical Chaitanya Narayana school kids, they don't follow these rules, even though they study in English medium. It's a very unfortunate situation. We don't focus on these fundamental issues, and we dream of becoming a very big thing in the life. Okay, so that being said, yeah, you can unmute and you can ask the question.
Yeah, sir. So my question is like whenever we're declaring functions or variables in Python, so always we should go and declare it underscore when we have two words.
Yeah, when we have more than one word, if it is if you are using Python as a scripting language, where you are not defining any classes, etc., then the best practice to name the functions is like this. But if you have a class and if you want to define functions in that class, then the best practice is to use camel case. With the class name, you have to start with uppercase. With the functions in the class, we typically start with lowercase and we use camel case. That way, you will differentiate between the functions that are inherited from classes and the functions which you are directly using in the way of scripting. So that is one of the common practice which we follow.
Even it is same for variables also in when you define class.
Yeah, variables also same. Yeah, variables again, if it is a instance of a class, then we use camel case. If we are using all primitive types and all, even non-primitive types, if you are not explicitly using it as a class for str and all, right? Str is not a primitive data type; it is string. Okay, and even if you look at the name, they use all lowercase because they might have felt that it is a primitive type. And when we create variables such as string type, list type, etc., we typically use snake case. This is called as snake case. We don't use camel case. Camel case is primarily used when we get into the object-oriented approach. It all depends upon how you want to enforce the standards as per your project. whenever you start, you just review the Pepper standards and you just stick to the Pepper standards. And also there are plugins in IDEs such as PyCharm which will enforce these rules. And hence, whenever you see the warning, just look at the warning and try to fix it. Okay. Most important part is the code should be readable by anyone easily. That's why you should always give the names of variables, classes, etc. in a readable fashion. We should not give the names such as A, B, or our names. Many people at the entry level, they just give the names to the variables. I don't know why they do that, but they give the variable their names to the variables or their girlfriend's names to the variables, right? Which is not appropriate. Okay. So Venkat is saying it appears that mixed type data can be passed to. Yes, it can be anything when it comes to keyword variable. When it comes to parameters which takes variable number of keyword arguments, the data type can be anything because Python is a dynamically typed. Python variables are dynamically typed. As they are not statically typed, it can be anything. Okay. So that being said, let us recap. But before going into that. There are no.
I have one last question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you move forward? Like I want to say, yeah, the phone numbers. If you have another variable as a home phone numbers or company phone numbers, how do you distinguish between the values being passed, arguments being passed, which belongs to which one?
Yeah, so either you can use variable argument, but you cannot have more than one, I guess. I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, you cannot have more than one. In that case,
Yes.
what you can do is you can actually define it like this. And while passing the phone numbers, you can create a dict, explicit dict like this. And you can say home phone 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 0. And then office phone.
I see, got it.
Like that. Okay, I think this also should be like this. Okay, then it will work. So you just have to pass it as dict. We'll talk about dict tomorrow. So at that time you will understand.
Durga, do we have any standard exceptions? These two exceptions are defined exceptions,
Yeah.
right? We define.
Yeah. No, these are standard. This is standard exception only. Value error is a standard exception. We are just customizing the message. We are raising this standard exception and we are customizing the message. Already we have seen type error, key error. All these are standard exceptions. Okay. We also have zero divisible by zero error. All those are there. You just go to the list and you will understand most of the standard ones. Okay. Let us recap all about arguments, which is very, very important. Required arguments or parameters typically starts at beginning. Parameters with defaults or keyword parameters will follow. Okay. Variable length parameters or arguments typically starts with asterisk. It can be a normal parameter or a keyword parameter. Variable number keyword parameters with starts with star and is interpreted as a dict within function. How to pass order of parameters? First, the required parameters with no defaults. One or more of these parameters with defaults or keyword parameter, variable length parameter. If you have both, first you have to pass the parameters with the defaults or keyword, then you have to pass variable length parameter. Finally, variable length keyword parameter. In Python 2, variable length parameters cannot be before keyword argument. But in Python 3, I think you can have in any order. You can have the salary before phone numbers or salary after phone numbers. You can have in either way. Whereas in Python 2, the last but one should be variable length parameters and last one should be variable length keyword argument or keyword parameter, or the parameter which takes variable number of keyword arguments. Okay, as a Python programmer, we need to be familiar with all types of arguments as they are used quite extensively in the third-party libraries such as pandas. I will just show you an example. And now, if you actually look at the help of certain libraries in pandas, it will start making sense because we have enough knowledge. So I can say pd dot read underscore CSV, which is very commonly used function in pandas to read the delimited to read the files which have delimited records. Now you see the path is the regular argument. Okay, and then you have bunch of keyword arguments, and all of them have defaults. So if you don't pass anything, it will just take these values and you will see certain behavior. If you want to customize, you just have to override these keyword arguments, and then you can take it further. The advantage of this is you don't need to pass all the arguments all the time. You only pass those arguments that are required for you. Okay, so now if you actually go through the help of any function, it will start making sense because you have enough knowledge about all the arguments related to function. This is a very, very important thing which you need to keep in mind, spend some time, practice, understand, so that eventually your productivity will improve quite a lot, because you will be able to interpret the documentation clearly, and you should be able to use appropriate arguments for your project purposes, or for the purpose of your projects. That being said, let me clear the output here and get into a very important concept called as Lambda functions. Just give me a moment, okay? So far we have seen normal functions. Normal functions are those functions which actually have names associated with it. But when it comes to Lambda functions, they are nothing but functions without a name. We can assign them to a variable or use it as a parameter to a function. Typically, we use as a argument to a function, not the parameter. Here it should be argument, because parameter is the one which we will have in the def. Argument is the one which we pass to satisfy the parameter whenever we invoke the function. Okay, so Lambda functions can be assigned to a variable, or we can pass it as an argument to a function which accepts a function as argument. However, there are certain limitations to Lambda functions. With respect to Lambda functions, we cannot specify return statement. We cannot create new variables. We can only process the arguments. We can only pass the arguments to Lambda function using simple expressions. I will actually walk you through, then you will understand the meaning of this. These simple expressions will be returned automatically even if we don't have return statement. Let's take the example of sum of integers between a range using loops. The only reason I'm using loops here is to make sure that you understand the Lambda functions. And if someone asks in the interview to develop a function to get sum of integers within a range, or sum of squares of integers within a range, you should never use loops. If I'm the interviewer, I will immediately conclude the interview and I will disqualify the candidate. I will give hints just to remind him whether there is a better way of solving this problem by recollecting the mathematics and all. If he could not recollect, I will just reject that candidate. Even if he could not implement the logic, if he can actually tell me the function, I will consider him over the programmer who developed in the loop. Even though the syntax and semantics of the function is correct, still I will reject that candidate. And even the other guy, even if he could not write the program, as long as he attempted using the formula, I might consider that candidate. Okay, so that being said, keep in mind, don't ever write the simple functions using loops. Just try to apply formulas, and this is the pattern which you should follow whenever you face the coding tests. As part of the coding tests, most of these scenarios will be simple. They will not be very complicated. And you just have to think about the efficient solution. Most of the interviewers, what they do, once you write the logic, they will try to ask you the order of complexity and all those things. And when they will ask about the order of complexity is when you write the inefficient code. And they will try to give you hints, whether is there a way to improvise on it. If you cannot write the logic, can you write the pseudocode of that approach, so on and so forth. And you should be able to understand those hints, and you have to answer appropriately, or at least write the pseudocode appropriately. That being said, first I will develop the code using the named functions, and then I will actually walk you through the Lambda functions. In the first case, where I want to compute the sum of integers between a range, the function will be like this. Okay, so def sum of integers LB comma UB. If I want to use loops, I just say total equal to 0 for I in range LB comma UB plus 1, and then total plus equal to I return total, and then I can validate by saying sum of integers 1 comma 10. Now you see we got the sum of integers from 1 to 10, which is nothing but 55. 5 to 10 is 45. You can see the result. Even if I want to use the formula, in this case, the way I'll develop the code is like this. First, I will say def sum n. Okay, I will take one argument, which is nothing but n. Because if you recollect the formula, if I want to get sum of integers between a given range, it is nothing but sum of integers up to upper bound minus sum of integers up to lower bound minus 1, right? So there is a reusable functionality. So you have to emphasize on the reusability even in the simple use case. Okay, so in this case, I can say return n times n plus 1 by 2, and I want to typecast it into integer so that I don't get it as float. Okay, so even if I have to use formula, I typically develop the logic like this. Now I can say sum of n ub. Okay, ub is not defined. Let me define those variables here. LB equal to 5, ub equal to 10. Now you see we got 55. Now to get the difference between sum of integers up to ub and sum of integers up to lb, I just have to say def sum of integers. Let's say I want to take two arguments lb comma ub, right? Now I can say return sum of n ub minus sum of n lb minus 1. Okay, now if you run this, if you want to invoke, you can just say sum of integers 5 comma 10, and you can see that you got 45. So this is how you can actually focus on reusability and develop the logic, because this can be invoked twice even in this simple use case. I have created this function and then take it further. Now if you want to add exception handling, you can actually write the logic before invoking this to check whether lower bound is less than or upper bound or not, and then you can take it further. Okay. However, we will continue using this looping approach for the other problem statements such as sum of squares, sum of cubes, sum of events, etc. Yeah, it seems there is a question.
Sir, yeah, some basic question. So why we are doing this LB minus 1, sir?
The reason is I have to consider 5 also. If I do not say LB minus 1, when I say 1 to 5, even 5 will be included. But when I try to compute from lower bound to upper bound, I have to add 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, if I do not say LB minus 1, it will only add from 6 to 10. It will not include this 5. So what I'm doing here is I'm getting sum from 1 to 10, and then I'm getting sum from 1 to 4, and then I'm subtracting the latter from the first one, which is nothing but 55 minus 10, which is nothing but 45. Okay, if I say just LB, it will be only 40. That means we are actually adding up to 5, which is 15, and we are subtracting it from the 55, which is not correct. Okay. That being said, now let us look into the other scenarios also, where we want to get sum of squares, sum of cubes, etc. So I'm just copying this and renaming it to sum of squares. Rest of the functionality is same. Only place where it will change is here. I just have to say I times I. Okay, so that we get I square, and I'm assigning it to the total. I'm adding it to the existing total. Now, if I invoke this, it is giving me the sum of squares of the integers between 5 and 15. Now, if you want to get the cubes, next problem statement is cubes and also even numbers. There are 2 of them, right? So I can say like this with respect to cubes. I can say sum of cubes. I just have to say I times I, and then invoke this sum of cubes, and you will get sum of cubes, which is nothing but 2925. If you want to get sum of even numbers, again, the logic is same, except that while adding to total, we want to check if I is even. If it is even, then we want to add. Otherwise, we don't want to add, which means we can add with 0. So I can actually write a ternary operator like this. So I can say I, if I mod 2 equal to 0, else 0. Okay. Now, if you actually run this, it will give us the sum of evens. We got only the even numbers. So this is a ternary operator using which I have implemented this logic. If you recollect, the way ternary operator can be written is, first you have to specify the value which has to be returned in case the condition is true. So in this case, if I mod 2 equal to 0, I want to just return the value itself. That's why I say I, and then I specified the condition. Then if the condition fails, whatever it has to be returned, we have to include as part of the else clause like this. Okay. Now, what is the common thing in all the 3 or in all the 4? Everything else is common except this piece. Okay. So we are compromising the reusability of the code, creating the aggregator, looping through the elements, assigning to the aggregator by adding it to the aggregator, and then returning the aggregator. All is same except this one, right? So what is the way to solve the problem? Sometimes what we can do, we can pass additional argument saying whether you want to add or compute squares and add, or compute cubes and add, or if you want to check if it is even and then add, you can add additional argument such as a type. And if type equal to, as part of the for loop, if type equal to add integers, just add I to the total. If type equal to square and add, like that we can come up with a conditional. Now, if you want to add another scenario like that, again, we have to go back to our sum function, and we have to make some changes, and we have to go through the testing process, and we need to ensure that everything is working properly. There is a lot of regression also involved. We need to make sure that the other parts of the function is not touched or impacted because of the new changes. So over a period of time, there will be code manageability issues. With programming languages like Python, they have solved this problem by using a concept called as higher order functions and lower order functions. Higher order functions are those functions which take which can accept a function as an argument, and lower order function is nothing but that function which can be passed to a higher order function. So to solve this problem, what we can do is we can actually define one function. Okay. The function name can be mySum. Ideally, I should have used snake case, but it's okay. I just used camel case in this case. But for the new function, I'm using mySum. I can say LB comma UB and then F. Here we don't know what is the type of each of these arguments. We can pass whatever we want. It all depends upon what is how is this used as part of the definition of the function, which will determine the relevance of those arguments or parameters, right? So everything else is same. We want to have a aggregator total for loop, so and so forth. So I'm just copy pasting that those pieces of this piece of code from the earlier one. However, as part of total plus equal to, I want to invoke the function, and for that function, I want to pass this I as argument. Okay. While defining this MySum function, we don't know the functionality that we'll be using for f. As we don't know, we have to pass at runtime. Whenever we invoke this MySum function, we have to pass how we can actually it should be here only. It should not be here. We will get into the Lambda functions in a moment. Still, we are talking about solving the reusability problem here, not the Lambda functions. I will talk about Lambda functions in a moment. So here, MySum is a higher order function which takes 3 arguments. 2 arguments are regular arguments such as LB and UB, which we have to pass as integers because we are using range, which takes integers as arguments, and then it will iterate through. As part of the functionality, we are iterating through that range, right? And the third argument, we don't know what we will be passing, but we are sure that we will be passing some function because we are invoking that here. But what is the functionality that will be used? We don't know yet. So let us create this function. Okay. Now I want to implement the same functions which we have seen earlier, like sum of integers, sum of squares, sum of cubes, sum of events, etc. So to instead of writing the functions such as sum of squares, sum of cubes, etc., what I will do is I will create a new set of functions, because we are still not talking about Lambda functions. We are talking about regular functions only. So in this case, to use better usability, instead of creating functions such as sum of integers, sum of squares, sum of cubes, etc., what I'll be doing is I will be creating a function called as I. It takes 1 argument, which is nothing but n. And as part of this function, I just want to return the argument which is passed, return n. Okay. Now using this function, I can pass it to satisfy f for this higher order function called as MySum. And if you look at the way it is invoked in this MySum function, is it is taking 1 integer as argument. Here also it is taking 1 argument and it is returning the same. So as long as these both satisfy, it will work without any issue. So let me create another cell, and then let me say my underscore sum. LB is 5, UB is 10, and then I just want to pass I, which is nothing but a named function which takes 1 argument and returns the same without any manipulation. And as long as the return value is integer when it is invoked, it can be added to the total without any issue. As we are passing integer and as it is returning integer, we are able to add to total and it works. However, if if this I function doesn't return integer, if it returns something else, let's say str of n, then the functionality will be different, and also it might even throw the exception. So it all depends upon whether when we invoke this function, whether that satisfies the overall functionality of that higher order function or not, determines the capability of using this function as lower order function to the higher order function such as sum or MySum here. So let us try this one, and we can see that it is working without any issue. Now let me manipulate this by saying string of n. Okay, so as we have plus for string, which will concatenate the numbers. Now if we run this, it will actually, okay, it is actually saying unsupported operand types for plus equal to int and string. So what we can do is, if we actually say like this, because total is string, now it will work. Okay, but earlier it didn't work because total is of type integer, and you cannot concatenate a string to the integer. That's why it failed. Okay, so either it will throw the exception or the behavior might be something else, depending upon the compatibility between the lower order function that is passed to the higher order function and the logic that is there as part of the higher order function. Okay, that being said, now let me remove this string and let me return this number itself, and it should work without any issue. We got the 45. Now, if I want to use the same function for squares, what I can do? I can actually say def square of n. So in this case, the functionality is nothing but n times n. And now if I say square here, it is taking one argument and it is just squaring and returning. As long as we add that number to another integer, which is nothing but total, it will work. Which means the way we are invoking here and whatever is returning here are compatible, and hence it will work. Now I can run this and we can get the square of the numbers. Now we can actually add additional function for cube, and we can say n times n like this, and we can say cube, and we should be able to run these two things, and you can see 2925, which we have seen earlier also. Now for the even, you can say def even of n, return n if n mod 2 equal to 0, else return 0. Right? Now we can actually invoke even here, and it will only get the sum of even numbers between the range. So this is how you can actually use the higher order and lower order functions. As part of lower order functions, you can pass named functions like this, and then you can take care of the functionality. However, if you don't want to create these simple functions like this, because typically getting square, cube, even number, etc. Are very simple, and it can be use and throwable. So there is no point in creating functions like this as part of our application. Whenever we want to use, as long as the requirement is to iterate through the elements, and each element should be added. And if you want to manipulate before adding, and if you want to pass that logic at runtime, better alternative is to use Lambda functions, where we don't have names associated with those functions. Okay, so for these simple expressions, instead of creating functions like this, we should be able to use Lambda functions. Now let us understand how to use Lambda functions and invoke MySum here. Okay, so for MySum, which is nothing but a higher order function, there is no difference. It is same. You don't need to worry to make any changes to it. However, while invoking it, let's say I want to get sum of integers. I can say MySum like this, and then lower bound and upper bound 5, 10. And if I want to return the same number, and I want to pass this function as lambda, then I have to start with lambda keyword. So instead of saying def, we just have to say lambda. Here we have name. Here we have name for these functions. In this case, as we are saying lambda, and as there will be no name for the function, we just have to pass the arguments. So in this case, let's say n is the argument, or I is the argument. Whatever you want to name, you can name. Let me refer to my documentation, which one I have used. I have used the n only. Now, to get sum of integers between a given range, I just want to return n. Okay, and the return statement cannot be used as part of the lambda function. Now you see it worked. So all we did is we removed the def and replaced with lambda. We haven't given any name to the function, and if we have arguments, we just have to pass the arguments like this. If it takes multiple arguments, you just comma separate them and pass the arguments. There will be no function name. There shouldn't be any return statement after column. You just apply simple transformation logic on top of arguments, and it will work fine. Okay. Now to get sum of squares, all we need to do is just copy paste this and say n times n. It will work. To get sum of cubes, n times n. It will work. To get sum of evens, you just have to say n if n mod 2 equal to 0, else 0. It will work. Now, if you want to go with numbers which are divisible by 3, Okay, all you need to do is you copy this, and then you can say n mod 2 or n mod 3 double equal to 0. Then I want to add, otherwise I want to add 0 in place of that number. Now we got the sum of the odd numbers. Now if you want to get the sum of prime numbers, so prime numbers is a bit complex logic. You cannot just express like this. You might want to check whether the number is prime by iterating through using a for loop. You have to take care of assignments internally and all. In that case, you have to have a named function such as prime, and you can invoke that function using the lambda function like this, and you should be able to take it further. Or you can also directly pass that prime function here, and it should work. Okay, so as long as the logic is simple and can be expressed without assignments or without breaking the logic into multiple lines and all, we can use lambda. Otherwise, we have to go back onto the named functions. In this case, if you want to get sum of prime numbers within a given range, then we have to use named functions only to pass it as a lower order function to the higher order function mysum. Okay. So recapping it, without lambda functions, we might have to develop 3 different functions with name. However, we have reduced the amount of coding by passing lambda functions as arguments. Let us see where lambda functions are extensively used. They are used in third-party libraries such as iter tools, and also there are functions from standard libraries in Python itself, which are map, filter, etc. Let me just show you the help. We'll actually get into using these map filter functions once we understand the collections. If I say map ? Here and run, you see here map takes 2 main arguments. The first argument is the func. Func is nothing but the function which contains the logic. IEEE is nothing but collection. So as part of the func, if it is a simple logic that needs to be applied on each and every element, then we use lambda function. If we have to apply complex logic, then we use regular function. Typically, map is used to apply simple logic on each and every element in a collection. And for that purpose, we typically pass lambda function. We will see the examples as part of tomorrow's session once we get into the details with respect to collections, tuples, manipulating them using map, reduce APIs, etc. And we'll be developing a similar function like map, filter, etc. As part of one complete module. Okay, and then you will understand and get a good hang around all the collections, manipulating the collections, and also you will get better at programming once you go through those details. That being said, let me take few questions before we wrap up for the day. So the first question is from Raj. Can you explain why we used n directly? Which one you are talking about? Are you talking about this? Raj, you can unmute and you can actually talk also.
Sir, lambda can take 2 arguments like n, comma.
Yeah, it can take 2 arguments. We will see those examples. Yeah. Raj, do you have, I didn't get your question completely. If you can unmute and ask.
Are you able to hear me? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, yes. The n which we directly use, right? Lambda of n is n, right? So how we use that n, because we already declared on the top. Yes.
So no, if you look at the mysum, the new mysum syntax, right? It takes 3 arguments. Okay. We have to satisfy this. Even though we are only getting sum of integers within a given range, we have to satisfy this 3rd argument, right? Mm-hmm. So to satisfy the 3rd argument, I just created a simple function which returns whatever argument that is passed. That's it.
So, but lambda n is n means it is returning n, right? But
yeah.
Like
whatever is passed here will be returned. Where are we passing it? We are passing it as part of the higher order function. In the loop, we are actually saying f of I. So in the first iteration, it will actually pass 5. If you pass 5, 10, lambda n colon n, As part of the first iteration, it will be passing 5. When we say total plus equal to f of I, it will return 5 and it will be added to total. Like that, in each iteration, it will keep on adding those numbers, and then you will get the output. Is it clear, or are you still confused?
Still confused actually. How come lambda is replacing that function is my question actually.
So lambda is not okay.
I think his question is n is kind of a name of the variable, right? It can be n, m, or whatever it could be.
No,
Lambda of m also you can put, right? It's not only n.
Yeah. It can
just,
be.
Just a variable name.
It can be. Yeah, it is an argument name. It's not a variable. It's a parameter.
It's argument.
So whatever we are passing as argument here, we are returning the same thing, and where we are passing here. But his question is not that. His question is how this is replacing f.
Yeah.
That is his question. Okay. So here lambda is nothing but a function, and my sum is actually accepting functions as arguments. Okay.
Yes.
To satisfy this f, we have to pass a function. It can be a named function like this, or it can be a function without a name. The term which we use for a function without a name is lambda function or anonymous function. Okay, so here we are specifying a function without a name, and we call it as lambda in Python. That's the term we use. That's it. And the way you can pass unnamed functions is like this. You have to use lambda keyword, and you have to specify the arguments that needs to be passed to the function, and whatever simple logic you want to implement, you can implement like this.
Okay.
I hope it is clear now.
Yes.
So the convention is that.
Let me take another question in the chat, then I'll come back to you. Okay. So Thiruvarun is asking, is it safe to use lambda function as arguments for all higher order function? You can't use the lambda function in all the scenarios, as I have explained before, right? As and when you can express the logic in simpler fashion like this, we can use lambda function. Both lambda and functions with names are at the same level. There is no concerns with respect to safety and all, whether you use lambda function or named functions. Lambda functions have limitations, and we should be using it only when we want to express simple logic. If you have complex logic, in place of lambda, you have to use the common named functions only. It will be clearer as part of tomorrow's and next week's sessions when we actually get into the details, Varun. So don't worry too much about it at this time. From performance perspective, I don't think there will be any difference. It will be very negligible. And someone is asking the question in the Zoom via voice. Now you can unmute and you can ask the question.
Okay, in that lambda n colon and n, that particular notation, can you explain if n colon is like a variable name, and then n is,
no, let me
the value?
Yeah, let me actually explain. So if you want to use named function, how will you do? Let's say the function name is I. Okay, and this function returns only n. Okay, now you want to express this as a lambda function. How will you transform this into lambda function? In place of def, we don't need to pass anything. Instead of giving a name like I, we just say lambda. Okay, that is the keyword which we have to use. All the arguments which we typically pass to a named function, we just have to pass like this. If you have multiple functions, multiple arguments for that function. As our named function takes only one argument, I am using only one here. And then there shouldn't be return statement. In this case, I'm just returning n. Because of the limitations in lambda functions, as we can't specify return, I'm just saying n directly. So return is return should not be specified. So this is how you can actually transform a named function into a lambda function in Python. Okay, and both are same. And both are same. You can even assign it to a variable. Let's say this is a equal to. So now you are giving a name to the lambda function, and you can also pass a here. Oh, yeah. Now you can also pass a here in place of the lambda function. It will just replace this a with this, and it will work. Typically, we don't use this approach. It's very rare. Okay, we don't use that often, and I don't want to confuse. That's why I haven't included that earlier. So it's pretty straightforward. You just have to understand the syntax to transform the logic from a regular named function to lambda function. By having these lambda functions, you are just not creating functions unnecessarily for simpler logic. Okay, so let me show you some examples so that it will make sense. Let me take this map. Okay, and let me read data. So don't worry about reading data and all, because we have time. I am covering this today. Don't worry if you have any questions with respect to read and all. I am just copying data in a file into a collection just to show the power of lambda functions. And even if you have questions, we will see after understanding the collections. But as people are very curious about the usage of lambda function, I am just demonstrating these things where we use it very commonly. So I can say orders equal to open and the path in which I have data on my local system. So in this case, I'm demonstrating using the local system. I'm not connected to dslab.itverse.com. If you are using dslab.itverse.com, the location for the dataset is different. I will explain that as part of tomorrow's class. I can say the path users itversity research data retail underscore db orders part -5 Let me see if it contains the file here. I think the file name is .csv. Now it is read. Okay, and then I'm actually saying read. Don't worry too much about these details. We will be talking about tomorrow. So in this case, I have created a collection by name orders. You can see here it is of type list. And if you want to get first few records, I can say colon 10 like this. All these things will be covered tomorrow when I talk about collections. I just want to preview first 10 records. Now, if you see, orders is of type list and each element is a string, right? Now I want to extract date from this. Okay, so I just have to iterate through the elements and extract the date. So map have that logic of iterating through the elements and all. We don't need to write we don't need to have to write that for loop, create the collection and return the collection. All those things are already implicitly there as part of the map. We just have to use the map function to extract the information we are looking for. So if you look at the help of map, it is taking two arguments. First argument is a function. Second argument is a collection. So to satisfy the function, either you can pass a named function or a lambda function. I want to pass the lambda function to extract the date. So if this is the string, okay, s equal to, and if you want to extract the date, already we have seen the logic, right? This is the logic which will give us the date. We got the date. Now I have to apply this on all the elements to extract the dates. How to do that? I can say map lambda yes, and I can use this logic. And the second argument is nothing but iterable, which is nothing but orders. Okay, and then I just want to convert into list. Why I'm converting into list and all, don't worry too much about it. We will see as we get into the map later. And I just want to get first 10 records by saying colon 10 like this. Now you see I got the date. So I did not create a global collection which will capture the dates. I did not iterate through the for loop. I did not append to the list, and I did not return the list. All the magic is under the map. To get the date, I just have to pass this business logic to extract the date. Now if I want to extract the status instead of date, status is the fourth field. I just have to do this, and then we got the collection of statuses. Now if you want to use named function instead of this, okay, all you need to do is you just create a simple function by saying def date get date from the string, and then you can say s dot split using comma, and you can say of1, and this is the function, and I can just say map of get underscore date. That's it. Now if you run, okay, there is something wrong. Okay, the reason, let me check. There is some
Pass
issue.
yes to the get date,
You
right?
need to pass something
For
to
get
get
date.
Get date. No, not required. We don't need to pass. Let me see. I will tell you what is the issue. Why it is not showing get date? Okay, let me run once again. So this is the orders. This is the, yeah, that is correct. You are correct. Who is that?
Raj.
Hey Raj, that is correct. As we don't have the written statement, I have made the comment, right? When we talk about functions, there will be implicit none. That's why we are only seeing nuns. Thank you. Yeah, now you got it, right? So if you want to use Lambda function, you just use this approach, which we have seen earlier. Let me add that logic here. Okay, so list of map of lambda. Yes. And then orders. You got the dates. Okay, so this is where Lambda functions are very, very useful to apply simple transformation rules. So if you follow the whole flow, right, I have covered how to manipulate the strings. Now I am slowly getting you into the lists. As we get into further details, you will understand how to process data that comes from the source systems if you want to build data engineering applications. And same is applicable in many other applications also. Even as part of the web applications and all, sometimes we might have to process data, and these are all applicable there also. Okay, and we will see all those string manipulations that we have done earlier, how we can achieve on the collection of elements that are created by reading from file into the collection. And you will understand those things, and we will actually develop the functions like map, filter, reduce, even join, to actually understand how they are implemented internally, so that you can evaluate your problem statement against the functions, and you should be able to use appropriate libraries to solve your particular problem. So that's how you will slowly build your Python programming skills. Okay, but by the end of the course, you should be able to identify the libraries that should be used, and you should be able to stitch and get a solution for your problem statement. Yeah, let me just give you a moment. There is a question from Zoom chat. Once I take that question, I'll come back to you. So Uma Mahesh's question is JSON and XML data files also. I do not understand, Uma. Can you unmute and ask that question?
This is Uma Mahesh Durga. So you said we can read only CSV files instead of CSV.
Yeah.
Either PDF or JSON or XML. Can we do?
Okay, we will get into those details later. Don't worry too much about reading the files and all. To answer your question, PDF and all are a special type, and there are special libraries for that. But with respect to JSON, XML, CSV, the way we deal with them is pretty straightforward. And typically we use pandas libraries for them. And we will actually get into those details as we proceed further. Now someone tried to ask the question.
It's me, Venkobara. What is the difference between list and map? Both are arrays, right?
Yeah. No, that's what. Don't worry about those things at this time.
Okay.
At this time, I just want to make sure you understand the use of these Lambda functions in a bigger picture.
Sure, no problem.
Still, the list, map, and all are not covered yet.
Yeah, collections will come back.
So tomorrow's material, we will start with collections only. Then you will understand.